Welcome to a new episode of the Product Owner Podcast. My name is Ruud, and in this podcast I talk to interesting guests from the product industry. Today we're discussing a challenge many product owners and managers face. Are we really doing product management, or are we just doing bullshit management? Sometimes it feels like we spend all our time in meetings, making plans and managing stakeholders, but we forget to actually make an impact with our product. How can we ensure that we create real value instead of just checking boxes? To talk about this, I've invited David Pareira. He has published over 350 articles with millions of readers worldwide and is co-author of the Agile Product Manifesto. He has worked in different product roles and is now the CEO of omoqo, a company that focuses on native cloud solutions for cargo terminals. He wrote a well-read blog about the topic we're discussing today, so he's surely the right person to discuss this with. David, welcome in the studio.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, great. You're the second one we're doing in English, the podcast episode. So great to have you here. Hey, a question from my side. What means bullshit management to you?
Bullshit management is an art. It's the art of doing things that create no value, but drain your energy. And then there's an equation behind it. The more bullshit you handle, the less value you create.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. I think that's opening a lot of questions from my side. So bullshit management, is it a term that you've been using for a long time, or did you just pick it up when discussing something with product owners? How did you get to that?
So I have been working in the product sphere, let's say like that, for 15 years. And then after about 7 years, I realized that many people face the same challenge I faced in the beginning of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, what is going on here? This is not product management. And I said, it's also not project management. And what is the real name of that?
Yeah.
And I was, let's say, very annoyed with everything that was happening. And I said, I'm going to call this bullshit. And that's bullshit management. And I said, this is the real enemy of product people.
Yeah. Why does it annoy you so much?
Because I started reflecting. At the end of the day, which value did I create? I would be able to tell you how much I talked about the work, but I would struggle to tell you who did the work itself. Mm-hmm. I knew how many meetings I attended. I knew how many emails I replied, but what about real value? And when I asked myself, how does this activity create value? I would say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that was a problem. I said, this is not a product management attitude. So I have to change that. And then I started kind of saying, this is product management. This is bullshit management.
Yeah.
And I said, we need to be more on this side here, not the other side. So I had to change it. So that's how I came up with the name, because I wanted to be something that people would take it seriously. Because I believe not everyone is interested in doing bullshit management.
No, why not?
Well, because then you end the day and you have no energy.
Yeah, you're not happy with ending the day and the work you've done.
What is the purpose?
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good topic and great to discuss today. I started already about that. Second guest that we're talking English with in this podcast. I think that's good. You're worth it to talk about that, and it's a well-read blog. But some people might know you for some reasons to get in touch with you before. One of them is that I read that you taught over 15K students in over 120 countries. What do you teach them?
I teach product management, and one of my most watched course, it's called Anti-Bullshit Product Management.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed that most of the courses tell people what they should be doing. And I generally focus on sharing my mistakes.
Yeah.
Because all the things I'm calling wrong, I've done them.
Yeah.
So I realized that after working for more than 10 companies, sometimes you just don't know that what you are doing makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
You need someone to help you see that. And then my courses focus on that. I started creating courses, first in Portuguese.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my first one was in Portuguese and video course, like just self-paced. And then I realized that many people cared about it. The course was so simple, but so honest.
Yeah.
I actually don't even show myself in the very first course I created. It's just a presentation and then I narrate there. But people say, this is something that helps me act today for a better tomorrow. I said, what if I create in English? What if I keep helping people understand what they should not do,
Yeah.
and then I help them understand what would help them create value. And that's what I focus on, helping people.
That sounds very nice. And so, do I understand correctly that the courses are all about your own mistakes then?
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't notify. It's not the way you notify someone is doing something wrong. No, you experience yourself. You made the mistakes yourself, and that occurs to your students. Let's say.
Yeah. So I have done many things wrong because how I entered in product was out of the blue, and I was not well equipped to be a product owner, as that was the first role I had in the product sphere. And then I learned by doing. And when you learn by doing, it means some things you take as granted, say, yeah, that's how it should be. But then after maybe a few years, you realize there's something dramatically wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw in your about page that you failed more than you succeeded. So this is a little bit in line with what you're saying right over here.
Yeah, that's correct.
And do you force yourself to fail, or how does it work for you? How do you want to learn on a daily basis in this case?
So there are two versions. The first version of myself, I didn't want to fail. I failed by chance. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So let's say I took precise requirements from stakeholders. I wrote user stories so beautifully and so detailed that anyone could implement them without talking to me. The only thing they didn't know was the problem they were supposed to solve.
Okay. Yeah.
And then often we solved the problem nobody cared about. So we created a problem we should not have in the first place, a feature nobody used. So that happened because I didn't know I was doing it wrong. And then I failed many times. And now, what I realized, if you want to innovate, you need to fail. So I accelerate failures. And the best definition of failure for me comes from Alexander Stovall. He's the CEO of Strategizer. And he says very clearly, avoid big failures or you're dead. Embrace small failures or you're dead.
Okay, so embrace small fails. Is that also what you tell your people? You're a CEO at omoqo, right? Is that also something that you share to all your people? Hey, this is the way we work. Embrace small failures.
What I share with them is like, what is the confidence we have? Based on what? Let's use evidence. So based on evidence, we can decide how much we are going to invest. For example, a client tells us, I would pay for that. I say, weak statement. I want to see a letter of intent of the client, and I want to see an overlap with our clients, not only one. Then that is strong evidence that justifies building.
Yeah.
A client just saying, I would pay. In other words, the client saying, go away. I just don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, I want to get rid of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's clear. And so you tell your people, okay, get a lot of evidence to as soon as you're building something or bringing something to the market or working something, make it evidence based.
Yes. And what I tell people is the most important thing is the speed of learning. So I say, when we lack evidence, the question is always the same. What can we learn in one day?
Yeah.
And based on what we learn, then we decide if we want to invest another day. Then maybe it's good, so let's invest 1 week. And if that's proven successful, I say, then let's invest the time that takes to deliver something.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
But my attitude with the team is to drop bad ideas fast enough.
Okay, that's interesting to hear that you are. If there's an idea, you want to focus one day, time box on it to validate it, or find evidence. If you don't find it, another day. But just time box. That's good to hear. So instead of seeking for evidence and never know how much evidence we actually need.
Yeah, that's my my perspective, because what I see is like many teams focus on estimating, and estimation actually means it's an estimation. It's wrong. So we don't know what we don't know. That's the reality. And what I tell team, let's limit the investment based on what we know. Zero knowledge means 1 day investment maximum.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I want to see what we learned. So what can we do? Can we interview a few clients and get a perspective? Can we do something with expert stakeholders that we have and understand if this makes any sense? And then based on what we learn, then we can decide if we want to put more investment. And it's not about saying like how long it takes. It's like how long can we invest based on what we know.
Yeah. Okay. Now, and hey, you are CEO of omoqo. You work in Germany. So for me, honestly, in the Netherlands, I never heard of it before, but I assume it's quite a big company as I see what you do. Can you explain a little bit about the company and your role over there?
So the company is actually small, but part of a big group. So omoqo is a spin-off of HPC, which is Hamburg Port Consulting.
Oh, yeah.
So what happened is HPC has been in the business for 45 years. So they said, we have a lot of knowledge and we would like to create a product for the maritime industry called Terminal Operating System. But if we try creating inside our business, it will become a project and it will die because won't be a priority. So they decided to do a spin-off. And the idea of omoqo was to have access to knowledge from the mother company while creating a product that could go to the market and serve multiple terminals.
Yeah.
And I joined there initially as an interim chief product officer. So it's a bit funny because back then I had decided I would only consult companies. I didn't want to be a CEO or anything like that.
Yeah.
So omoqo was one of my clients. And then after a few months, the investors start saying, hey, come in. I said, no chance on earth. And I said, why not? I said, because I just want to have my flexibility. I want to do things and so on. I said, what if we agree with you? You have your flexibility. And the most important thing is about results. I said, about results, we can talk. So I had agreed on signing as a chief product officer. But then they came to me the day of signing with a different contract, and it was written CEO. I said, hey, that's a different game.
That's a quick promotion, I guess.
Yeah.
Even if you see it as promotion, though.
Yeah, I just said it's a little bit big pair of shoes to me. And the investor said, what if we do it together? We do it together in the beginning, so we equip you for that. And then there's something with me, which is generally my curiosity is stronger than my fear. And I said, okay, the end of the day, I will learn, I will have fun, and let's check it out. That's how it happened.
Okay, so that was surely no typo. It was on purpose that he wrote CEO instead of CPO that day.
Yeah, it was. They made a crazy bet, I would say.
Yeah, quite out of the blue then for them with no CEO experience. But I think it's a good one. Since when are you a CEO there?
Since 2 years now.
2 years now. Okay, so far so good.
Yeah, it has been an adventure. Of course, there are ups and downs. I made mistakes as CEO, and not everything was perfect. The first mistake I did is I worked a lot with OKRs previously, and I like OKRs because of focus. But my first mistake relates to I was the CEO that I wanted to have. So I work with a lot of flexibility, and I want to be accountable for results. So if someone points where I should be, I will figure out how to get there. But that's how I work. I don't need structure. I figured that out.
Yeah.
But this version of the CEO was not what the company needed back then. They needed more structure. They needed more clarity. Not only the direction, but they wanted some more guidance.
Yeah.
So it took me a few months to do that. And first, when I started with OKRs, we defined the objectives and together the key results. And then I let the team do that. And I waited. If they needed something, I supported. But I trust them with that. That didn't help that much. The progress was not good, so to say, but the team said wow, we didn't know where to go. And then they start competing and so on. Then eventually I said, okay, let's stop with that. We are a startup. No more OKRs. Now we have only a product goal per quarter. Yeah. It was one goal per quarter, and that's all we are going to do right now. And I will meet you where you are, not where I want you to be, and I will help you on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
So I had to adapt.
Yeah, I think that's also maybe the learnings of leadership, that you don't just be the CEO you want to have yourself. You have to adjust yourself to the people you're leading, actually. And you figure that they need a different type of leadership in this case.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, cool. That's very nice topic. So you are nowadays CEO. I think if your resume, your LinkedIn page is correct, back in 2012, you had your first role as a product manager. What kind of skills you learned in your early years are you still using nowadays as a CEO?
It's a very interesting question. So it goes back to how I got that position, because I didn't plan to get that. I wanted to improve my English. That was what happened. I just didn't have enough money for that, so I couldn't travel abroad. So I took an immersion course in a small town in Brazil. And then there were people from all over Brazil in this small town. It was 7 days. By the end of it, we had to present something. And I was a software engineer. I thought, I'm going to present what I am working on, and it will be easy for me. I presented. And then someone just knocked my back and said, hey, I want to talk to you. I said, okay, let's have a talk. And then he said, I want you to work with me. I said, all right. Which programming language do you use?
Yeah.
He said, I have no idea. I said, but I am a software engineer. I need to know which programming language. And he looked at me. I don't care about that. I want you to be a product manager. I said, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
Because I worked like in a very different setup. I was a software engineer. It was a project setup. We didn't have any product manager. And he told me, it's all about communication. You talk to a lot of people, and the magic happens when you understand what to do and what not to do. And he said, I want you to be there because you make complex things simple. I understand what you say, and I don't understand what tech people say. Mm-hmm. So I think you can do the job pretty well. So when I look at this 2012, communication was the core of everything. And it still is. The difference is I relied a lot on writing back then. So I wrote requirements, detailed lists, and so on, product requirements, extensive. So today I see that doesn't help very much because you quickly become a bottleneck. So I focus more on collaboration. Mm-hmm. But the foundation is all communication.
Yeah. And that's what you still use nowadays as a CEO. The communication is foundation and it's the way to success with each other.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, cool. You explained one thing important about product management. You know what to do and what not to do. I think that's a good, we call it in Dutch a bridge. I'm not sure it's an English way of saying it as well, but a bridge to do bullshit management. Hey, as a listener, let's say I'm a product owner, product manager now, right now. How can I, let's say it this way. What are signals I'm doing bullshit management to you?
Where your attention goes. So the very first thing, if you have a bloated backlog, you should worry about. For example, when you look at your backlog, what do you see there? Do you see an objective, like a path to get there? If that's the case, great. Mm-hmm. But if you look at that and you see like a 6-year-old Christmas wish list, it's a problem. I generally compare that to a conversation I had with a godson. So it was a few years ago, I was going to Brazil and he said, hey, I want you to bring me some presents. And I said, of course, I'm your godfather. I'm going to bring you something. He said, I want a Marvel cap. I said, Marvel cap? Cool. He said, but I also want Captain America socks. I saw the theme. I said, good. He said, but I watched this movie and Tom Cruise wore this Ray-Ban. It was so cool. I want that. I said, Ray-Ban, Marvel cap, Captain America socks? He said, yeah, but don't forget my PlayStation 5. And I love strawberry jam. And I look at that, and why am I saying that? Because when I look at my backlog, it was a Christmas wish list not only of a 6-year-old. It was a Christmas wish list of marketing, operations, customer service. It had everything in and no clear direction where to go. So this is one sign. You don't know where we are going. You're trying to please everyone instead of focusing. Mm-hmm. And the other aspect is when you put a feature live, what is your action? Do you measure results? Or do you just jump to the next one? And then I ask one question, very important. When was the last time you removed a feature from the product? Because
take it out.
Yeah, take it out. Mm-hmm. Because some features, time for retirement. Get it out. They stop delivering value. Yeah. Because sometimes people think that a great product is the one you have nothing else to add. So it's so cluttered. You have everything, but nobody understands how to use it. Yeah. But a great product actually is the one you have nothing to remove because it gets the job done pretty well. Mm-hmm. You just look at Google. If you think that definition is flawed, open google.com. How many features do you have on a homepage? Open Uber. Look at the features you have. It's just precise because it focuses on getting the job done. Yeah. And often we just blow the product. And if we ask ourselves, why did we do that? We cannot answer. So that's a sign that you fell prey to bullshit management.
Yeah, so a Christmas list of features, user stories, and epics on your backlog. That's a signal. Okay, that's a sign. Let's say I'm doing bullshit management. If I open a laptop and I take a look at my backlog, I think you have to have it in mind. But whatever, and I notice this is the case. How do I change? Where do I start? What's the next step?
The next step is applying what I call as the extreme backlog routine. So you have
Control A, delete, or what's it like?
Control A delete would be a little bit wild. I would like that actually, because then you're gonna talk about what matters most right now.
Yeah.
So most of the place will be very hard to do this, but if you can do a Control A delete, well, do it, because then you say like, what should we be doing right now? You are gonna have this conversation. If you cannot be that extreme, you can imagine like the backlog as your house, but instead of being your house, it's a house of the product. For example, in your house, what do you do every day? You do some basic cleaning. You wake up, you make the bed, if you go to the toilet, you wash after yourself, you clean the dishes, and this basic thing every day. And then maybe once a week or twice a week, you wipe the floors, you remove the dust, and so on. And when you have a special occasion, for example, your mother is visiting you, then you clean everything, because if my mother is visiting me, she will find dust in place I didn't know they exist.
Yeah.
But then the backlog. So let's just imagine the house. What would happen if you stop doing the daily cleaning? You cannot go to your house anymore. Imagine the sink with all of these dirty dishes and everything and so on, and you don't clean the toilet anymore. So it's very disgusting. And what if you stop cleaning the floors and dust? You cannot breathe anymore. So that happens with the product backlog. If you don't take care of that, it will become a mess.
It's kind of messy. Yeah.
So how can you take care? What I like doing, every Friday, I put a meeting in my calendar, and it's called Clean the Backlog. I open there, and if you use Jira, I create a filter that will show me everything that was not touched at all over the last 3 months.
Okay, 3 months. Okay, yeah.
3 months relate to the time it takes to learn. So it depends on the startup or the company. For example, if you are in a company highly regulated, probably this will jump to 5-6 months. But you need to understand how long it takes for you to evaluate if what you created makes sense.
Yeah.
So if the longer than maybe 6 months, but I have not seen longer than 6 months. 3 months is generally a good balance. And then I do what I like most. I make the trash bin bigger, not the backlog.
Yeah.
So I take all of these items that were not touched over the last 3 months into the trash. And I just do that without looking at them. Because if I didn't look at them over 3 months, it means they were not relevant. Because what I think is the following: whatever matters to you will come back to you with the right context.
Yeah.
Because the product is continuously evolving. So you need to go back to that within the context you have right now. Otherwise, you start talking about old ideas that are unrelated to the current scenario.
Yeah.
So this is a step one. Every Friday, I do this cleaning. But then once a month, what I do, I look at the backlog and I say, what is the most important goal we have right now?
For the whole product.
Exactly. Or for the part I'm responsible and so on. But what is the goal? And then I say, how does this item contribute to the goal? It doesn't, trash bin it is. And this, and this. I start reviewing because I want to filter out everything that doesn't contribute to the goal. Because that means distracting you from achieving what matters most. And then once a quarter, I do a more serious cleaning. So I reflect even on the goal. What is the goal we are supposed to achieve? And how is our backlog paving the way to achieve this goal? If it is not, I start just removing.
Yeah.
So I do this frequently to remind us that our objective is not to have a full product backlog. It should deliver value. So we need to ensure that the backlog reflects that.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with you about the leading stuff. I see a lot of people that are afraid of the leading, but if you haven't touched it for 3 months, then it's you figured it's not relevant, and if it becomes relevant again, it will come to you or you pick it up anyway, right?
Yeah, if the leading is scary, start with archiving.
Why? I was asking. Well, like some are very afraid to delete it, so you can archiving and then still find it back, but then you will still never look at it again.
Yeah, but just to get used to that, archive and then you see what happened.
Yeah,
when
a baby step to deleting. Okay, yeah.
I like being a bit more wild, so I delete directly.
So, yeah.
When I moved to Germany, like my product director told me the following: I want you to look at the backlog so you understand where we are going. I said, okay, fair enough. And then I opened the backlog. I got shocked. 1,762 items. And I remembered this number because I couldn't believe, how can I read 1,762 items? I started reading. I didn't understand anything. And I looked there were items created like 4 years before I started. And then I start asking people, what is this for? What is this for? And some people, I don't remember. This is very old. I don't remember. I said, I'm just wasting my time.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to do something here. So I did what I just mentioned about deleting, but 6 months. I took everything not touched over the last 6 months, 800 something items to the trash. And then I got 2 emails. One was from a stakeholder saying, I swear to God, I didn't write this nonsense.
Okay. Yeah.
I said, it's getting interesting. The other was a QA saying, yeah, this bug was already solved, so thanks for closing. I said, doesn't sound bad.
Yeah. And that's just it. That were the only 2 reactions.
Yeah. And then I waited for a week. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
I said, what if I do it again for 3 months now? And then I did for 3 months. At this time, it was even more surprising. Nobody reacted. Nobody at all.
Yeah.
And we used Jira. I know that they received emails. I received loads of email because I was following everything. And then I said, all right, what if I look at the goal now and I start only connecting the backlogs that are related to the goal and everything else I remove.
Mm-hmm.
Then we end up with 50 something items. And then I came back to the product director. I said, I think I understand where you're going right now. He said, cool. So you understood everything. I said, no, I removed everything and I kept only what matters.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah.
He said, how did you do that? I said, well, I just did it. I deleted what was distracting, what nobody understood what it is. And I said, now we can talk about what matters. That any customer who comes to us makes us bleed because the cost of acquisition is higher than the customer lifetime value. So we need to do something either to reduce the customer acquisition cost or to increase the lifetime value. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that matters right now. So we should be acting on this. He looked at me, you're right. So then let's focus on that.
Yeah. Okay. Great job. Yeah. I think that works. I once before I had kind of the same. I started as a PO somewhere, and the backlog was fully packed with random stuff to me, and I deleted also a lot of things without telling someone about it. And I think 4 or 5 months later, someone replied to an email he sent me before, like 5 months before. Hey, I sent you this email to requested this for the backlog, and I can't find it. Did you ever put it on there? And I just replied like, yeah, I deleted it because it wasn't relevant before June next year. He said, no. But he felt like he was getting forgotten. I think he didn't understand or he didn't trust me at that point. So yeah, that's maybe bad stakeholder management. I couldn't explain to him what his role was. But yeah, I think that's also, they're very afraid to get forgotten. But yeah, I mentioned it's not a good one for the objectives we are aiming for. So it's not relevant at this moment. But what can you tell about that maybe? About stakeholder management versus bullshit management? I think a lot of product owners, you can lose yourself in stakeholder management as well. Yeah. Do you have signals, signs in stakeholder management where you see I'm doing bullshit management? Or quite a lot, I think? Or
the attitude. So the problem starts with the word management. Mm-hmm. Because people hate being managed. So if you try managing stakeholders, that will be very hard. Took me a while. So at the beginning, what I would do, and I realized many people do, you start having sessions with business people, like can be one-on-ones or with departments. Maybe you talk to marketing and you understand what they want. Yeah. And then you talk to operations or you talk to somebody else and you start understanding. The problem is like you're talking to areas one-on-one. And of course, everyone wants something done by yesterday. And what happened with me? I realized that I did what stakeholders wanted. Mm-hmm. The only thing I didn't know was what customers needed. And that I missed the point. So first, I created expectations on the one-on-one. So I was pleasing stakeholders instead of satisfying customers. Because you need both. In the beginning, I started treating stakeholders as the enemy. That was my mistake. They are not the enemies, but they are also not your customers. Stakeholders are your partners. Mm-hmm. So instead of trying to manage them, you need to build alignment. That's what matters.
To collaborate with them.
Exactly. Yeah. So what I started doing was the following. I started inviting the heads of each area to have a session to discuss prioritization. So I got marketing, operations, finance, accounting, and everyone in the same room. I looked at them and said, all of you tell me you have something if we don't do, everything will burn. And all of you have the same reasons. I said, now I want to agree on the sequence. And I want to understand why. And then I wrote what I knew to be a problem on the board. I wrote that on the board. I said, and here are the requests I have. 60 requests from you all. Where do I start? And just by doing that, what happened was that finance looked at that and said, our problems can wait. That means 20 items that I would not need to talk about. And then the other stakeholders, operations, start complaining. Say, mine are very critical, and customer service start complaining as well. And then they start having a fight and a discussion.
Between them.
Yeah, exactly. But then the others start supporting operations. And they started saying why they supported. And they realized that customer service was overloaded because operation couldn't run smooth enough. So then it would load customer service with complaints. And then they said, we need to solve this problem here because this is causing this effect and so on. And then everyone else said, all right, that's it. That's the direction we go. And then I looked at them and said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I will only create backlog items for the operations. In 1 month, we meet again, and then we look at the situation we are, and then we decide where we're going to go.
We have the same discussion again.
Yeah. So we start having that. And what happened very interesting was the attendance of the sprint reviews. Because before this session, nobody showed up. But within this session, everyone starts showing up. They start caring about each other because before they cared about their area. So these move from management to alignment. I did that first time in Brazil, then in Germany. Then I taught more teams to do the same. And the result was always the same. More collaboration, less coordination.
And would you say that the key to success was putting them together in a room and open the discussion together with different types of stakeholders? So let's say, this is the customer. How can we make the customer happy? We have a different type of divisions here, operations, finance, customer support, marketing perhaps. And what are we going to do first? So an open discussion with your stakeholders.
Yes, exactly. And what I did also is helping them understand the constraints we had. And I told them, we always, no matter what, have less capacity than ideas. There's always more ideas than capacity. You come up with many ideas, and we cannot do all of them. So we need to choose the better ones. And sometimes we agreed on, for example, some ideas, we don't know if they are the right ones. Let's run experiments. Let's try them out.
Let's validate.
Exactly. So we start doing this. And then what I realized was just about talking like people. What we started saying about 2012, communication.
And in general, we've been discussing quite a lot of things about bullshit management, and it's definitely worth it to read your blog about it to see other signals for bullshit management. And on the other hand, good product management. What's good product management to you in a couple of sentences? What do you think? This is very good product management, and that's what I like to see.
So product management is an art of uncovering what delivers value and figuring out how you can realize this value. So sometimes I say it is about identifying problems worth solving so we can build solutions worth building. So it starts with the problem space. And about the problem space, it requires understanding like how many users care about this problem? How much do they care about it? How often do they face this problem? And how satisfied they are with the way they solve the problems right now. Because you want to find a problem that is relevant enough for a number of people and the available solutions are not good. And then you can figure out how to build a solution. So that's the art of product management. It's connecting the dots. What happens very often, it goes to the solution space with very shallow understanding of the problem. And then it's no mystery that, as you read in my bio, I have done many wrong things because I focus too much on solutions. That's the summary of everything.
Why do people do that in general? Focus on solutions instead of problems?
Solution is way more concrete. You can plan, you can execute, you can work, you can get busy. Problem is very abstract. You need to talk to a lot of people and it's ambiguous. So maybe it's a problem for you, not a problem for me.
Yeah.
And then the product manager needs to decide, do I want to solve your problem? Do I want to invest in this? Because it's not like science. It's not binary, 0 or 1.
Yeah, that's the hard thing.
Yeah, you need to make decisions based on things that are sometimes arbitrary. So you may get confused. And when it comes to solution, it's not that confusing. You can design, you can code,
It's
you can
very
test.
concrete. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But we do need to go into the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Many times I say that being a product manager requires to be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And one of the uncomfortable things is exploring the problem space and dealing with all the ambiguity you're going to see.
Yeah, same. I mentioned in the introduction that it's not just about checking boxes, but as a person, as people, we really like to check boxes. That's concrete. It gives us control. It's the same for thinking about solutions. If I have to explain to my manager, what have you done last month? Maybe the best answer would be, I've been the whole month in the problem space. However, yeah, it's easier or maybe better to say I came up with a couple of potential solutions.
Yeah. So you need to try out, because some people say like, how much time do I spend in the problem space?
Yeah.
Is it 1 month? Is it 1 week? I say it's not like that. It's a sequence of micro iterations that based on what you learn, you scale the investment. And the example I give sometimes, it is my book. I didn't start writing a book. I started writing blogs, low commitment, and so on. And eventually I came up with an idea of a talk, and I called the talk as Untrapping Product Teams. And I started giving this talk. I was not thinking about a book. And then after a few talks, people would come to me and say, where can I get the book? I said, which book?
Which book? Yeah.
And they said, Untrapping Product Teams. I said, there's no book Untrapping Product Teams. And then people would say, you should write. And then the question is, should I commit to writing after this comment? Many people would say, yes, people are telling you. It happened in 3 conferences. But no, what I did, I said, one experiment that I can get results in 1 day. I posted on LinkedIn. I said, I am writing a book. It's called Untrapping Product Teams. And I want to hear from you which pains you have in your day-to-day. I put a survey and I said, if I get 200 people answering this survey in 1 day,
It's relevant.
it's relevant because they're going to give a little bit of their time. And then I said, then I will decide what I do next. And I got 500 people in about 24 hours. What I did next was to look at the pains I identified, and I interviewed 10 people to listen to their stories and so on. And I said, okay, I think I can do something. So I wrote 1 chapter of the book. I put in my newsletter, and I called that as Product Strategy Guide. And then I put as a paid mode because I wanted to see if people were willing to pay for that.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to see if those who paid would pay for something else. And I wanted to see if they would learn the message I wanted to convey by interviewing them. So I did this, and then I interviewed some people, and they got the message totally wrong.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned that I didn't write what I envisioned to convey. So at all.
Okay.
But then I noticed some parts were correct, and I started finding the patterns. What helped people understand what I meant was stories. So the anecdotes I shared from my career. And what resonated with people was because I am normal. I have not worked for any Silicon Valley or big company. I have worked for small companies. Some are bigger, but they are the normal ones, not the fancy ones, where you have a budget, where you have a lot of stakeholders, where you have the challenge that most product people have on their day-to-day.
Yeah.
So I realized that people wanted to hear more something related to their reality. Then I started writing more. And all of these things I told you happened in a space of 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a lot of learning. And then after that, I started writing it chapter by chapter. And then I formed something that I call it was my book advisory board. So I found 2 product managers from different levels in the career, a head of product, agile coach, scrum master, and a software engineer. And everything I wrote, I would share with them, and I wanted to know what they learned and so on. So when we are talking about problem space, this is what I'm saying. You continuously learn something, run an experiment, and then you realize okay, what is in need here? What can I do? Should I iterate? Should I pivot? Should I drop? So you continuously make these decisions.
Keep on learning
Exactly.
instead of coming up with a solution. Here's the book.
Yeah.
instead of validating in between and to the way to the book itself.
Yeah, because going back to your point, if you go to your boss in 1 month and you say, hey, I explored the problem space and there are many things we could do. If I am the boss, I would say, all right, out of these many things, what have you tried? That's what I want to do. And if someone comes to me, hey, I was doing this. I ran this survey. I got this number of things here. Here are the insights. And then I did this prototype testing. I had unmoderated prototyping sessions and all of these and so on. These are the ideas that we should never invest because of this and this and this. And here are ideas that look promising because of this and this and this. What do you think? It's a better conversation.
Yeah, it's a way better conversation. And then you can really tell them, okay, this is what I've done and this is what I've learned. And this is where it brings my product to. Okay, yeah, that's better. A better conversation. Yeah, really cool and good example about experimenting and validating shortly. A very quick, fast, and with the people you want to get feedback from. Yeah, that's a very good example as well. Hey, we are getting to the end of this podcast. I think there are a lot of cool things I've learned already. So really cool to step a little bit out of the bullshit management towards product management. Very valuable. So I would like to thank you for being here, coming over from Germany to Utrecht, and great to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
And at the very end of this podcast, I would like to thank you, the listener, for listening to this podcast episode. This time for our special guest, David Pareira in English. And I would like to see you back next episode. Thank you very much and see you later.